61% of U.S. consumers are living paycheck to paycheck. Now, I don't think that data is very shocking to many of you. But a new survey from Lending Club Bank is showing us that more Americans in every income bracket are living paycheck to paycheck. That is interesting. Let's break it down. Those earning less than $50,000, 78% of those folks are living paycheck to paycheck. Not surprising. But this is where it gets interesting. 44% of people who are making $100,000 or more are living paycheck to paycheck. $100,000. Now, I know the reaction here. Yeah, Ken, it's more expensive than ever. Yes, but we as Americans are making more money than we've ever made before. So let's dive into what's going on here. What we see is that paycheck to paycheck living is independent of how much money you make. So it's a behavioral issue, not a financial issue. Aha! 21% of paycheck to paycheck consumers cite non-essential spending as one of the reasons. But interesting, they don't say it's the number one reason. I beg to differ. So let's look at essential versus non-essential. What are they saying here? Well, what they're saying is look, I have no choice. I have to spend this money. That would be essential spending versus non-essential. Okay, so if your kids go to private school and you can technically afford it, but you're living paycheck to paycheck because of the private school tuition, is it essential that your kids go to a private school? Well, your emotion and my logic may disagree, but I will tell you, it's not essential. Is it essential that you drive a car with a $700 car payment? The average car payment in the United States is over $700, almost near $800. Is it essential? Well, your emotion might say, I need a car, Ken. Yes, you do. But you don't need a car that's brand new, that is losing its value every mile you drive and costing you an enormous amount of money every month. So what is essential versus non-essential? How about the stuff that we think, well, this is essential? Is it? More on that in a moment. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, U.S. consumer credit card debt has risen to an all-time high of $1.03 trillion. This from the second quarter data of 2023. So here's my take. I think this paycheck to paycheck living across the financial spectrum is about the focus on the now instead of the next. It's that simple. We have too many people making really good money who spend it all because they want something now. And they aren't thinking about the next. It's about the now. We've been marketed to. We are now being compared to everybody else thanks to social media. We have neighbors, friends, family members that have stuff that we don't have, and we feel like we need to have it. So we find a way to get it, and we mortgage our future because we want something and a whole lot of it in the now. That's how we got here. It's the only way to explain that across the income brackets, more people are living paycheck to paycheck. We're not being mature adults, folks. So what do we have to do? How does this change in America? Well, we've got to change our collective thinking from focusing on comparison to focusing on contribution. Comparison thinking is about looking at everybody else, comparing our current situation to what maybe we wanted it to be when we were younger. It's not always just comparing our lives to other people's lives. Many times what gets us in financial trouble is comparing our present to the expectation of the past. In other words, I thought I would have this, do this, be this when I was younger. I'm not there now. I got to speed up. I'll charge it to the card. We've got to change our thinking. And when we change our thinking to what is important in the next, what do I want my life to look like in the future? Then we'll change our priorities. So once we change the way we think about the future and we begin to get out of the now and focus in on all the feelings of the now and go, wait a second, what really matters to me? Where do I ultimately want to be in my life in the future? That allows me to change my priorities in the present. And so you move from the reactive lifestyle, which is saying yes to everything. The kids come home, they want this. Yes. Your friends say, hey, let's go on this trip. You say yes. All of these yeses add up to paycheck to paycheck living. All of these reactive yeses to everybody else lead to lifestyle creep and massive debt and ultimately unhappiness. So we've got to go from a reactive yes way of living to a proactive no way of living. What do I mean by that? I make my priorities very clear to me and to everybody else, so it now becomes easier for me to say no. And I'm not a jerk when I say no. I'm actually a mature adult who's got a plan that is purposeful and leads me to the future life that I want. So now that we have changed the way that we think, we're not present thinking, we're future thinking. That allows us to change our priorities and we become proactive, not reactive. And now we actually have to make changes. You gotta change your lifestyle. And this is about sacrificing the now, living on less for success later, where you live like few other people do. So let me give you just a few practical steps that you can take. Now, this requires sacrifice. The mindset I just mentioned. I'm going to sacrifice now so that I can ultimately have the next that I really want. First, you got to get on a budget. You got to know where your money is going. You got to take control of that money and tell it where to go. You do that with a budget. Number two, you got to take care of what matters most, and then everything else falls into place. We call it the 4 walls here at Ramsey Solutions. What are we talking about? We're talking about your housing. We're talking about your utilities to make the housing comfortable and safe. We're talking about food, and we're talking about transportation. Everything outside of that falls into place after we take care of those expenses. So, hey, you may have too much house. Change it. Sacrifice. 3, we got to cut extra expenses. Essential versus non-essential. This has to be a gut-wrenching, honest conversation to say what is actually necessary and then ultimately essential because it is not something I can do without. This isn't a want. This is need. And then we got to start an emergency fund. You must have money set aside for a rainy day because it's going to rain. You got to get rid of your debt. It's what's holding you back. Get rid of your debt. Give yourself a raise. Then you got to increase your income when necessary. Second, third job, selling stuff, side gigs, you name it. You have to increase income many times to get the margin you need to live free. Live below your means. Stop trying to keep up with everybody else. Stop comparing your house or your apartment to everybody else. Based on what you make, live in a place that's way less than you can actually live in because that's where you make up a lot of ground. Start saving for the big purchases so they don't catch you off guard. And then finally, remember why you're doing all this. Back to thinking for a change, the future that you want, and now the priorities based on those future ideals, and then the actions I've got to take. Always remember your why. Why are we doing this? Why are we sacrificing? I'm going to tell you, who wants to be in the rat race, the hamster wheel of living paycheck to paycheck? Don't you want more control of your life? Don't you want more freedom? I know you do. I don't want you to get to the end of your journey and regret most of your life because you couldn't say no in the now to get to the desired next.